It is Thursday morning, February 23rd, and we are here for our weekly check in. It's time to gather together, see how everyone's doing, um, ask some questions of the Bible, ask some questions of what it looks like to be a follower of Christ in 2023. How do we do this? How do we manage? How do we maintain? How do we thrive as followers of Christ? And so, that's the goal in all of this. And again, I am not here as an expert or as someone who's telling you something that I've already mastered, but I am just sharing my thoughts along the way, um, and the questions that I wrestle with. And hopefully, we can learn from each other. Please feel free if you have any comments. Um, Leave those in the comments section. If you have any prayer requests, do the same, and we will make sure to address those questions that you might have, or comments, or thoughts, as well as prayer requests for when we take that time for prayer later on. Good morning, Maxine. Morning, Allison. Morning, Scott. Man, great to have you with us this morning, Scott. Hope you're doing well. We're praying for you every single day. Morning, Pandora. So the last few weeks we've been going through a sermon series entitled "How We Grow," and the purpose of it was to look at ways in which we can um, better connect to God, but also ways in which we can grow as human beings. I mean, that's part of it, right? I truly believe that the closer we come to following Christ, the closer we get to knowing who Christ is and following Christ, the more joy, the more present we are, and it just connects to our individual lives as well. I just really feel like uh, you know we used to, the way I understood church when I was a kid, and again, I it, I don't think this was ever taught, but how those things, like, you pick up certain things, and you just assume. So there was things that you did on Sunday. There was church life, and then there was everyday real life. And there are things that I do on at church, or on Sunday, or on Sunday nights, or Wednesday nights. And when I was a kid, it was Wednesday night church, Sunday morning church. Um, so there were those things you did at church, and that was had its own area and influence. And then here are things I did in the real world: school, and sports, and work. When you get older, right? And those two things never touch. The Venn diagram of those two worlds never touch. There are things I do on Sunday, and there's the way I live on Sunday, and there's the way I live, Monday through Saturday. And um, and it was always just assumed that those two worlds are completely different. They have nothing in common. They don't touch in any way. But that's just not the case. Everything is spiritual. Everything. You know, if you are the best employee that you can be, that is honoring God. If you are sharing your talents uh, that God has given you, that is an act of worship. And so those two worlds are deeply connected. And so when we grow as followers of Christ, as disciples, as Christians, whatever word you want to, or adjective you want to use to describe it, it also connects to how we live our lives every single day. The type of a woman and man that you are, the type of human being that you are, is connected to how you connect with God. Because if God created all of us and we're all made in the image of God, then when we live out that image, it's going to live out in our everyday lives. And so we've been looking at ways that we can do that, setting up healthy boundaries, taking time to rest, protecting our schedules, um, giving, having times of giving. It's not just about money, but it's about time, which is the one thing we can never get back, and it's the one thing that we seem to have less of every single day. I don't know about you, but the day gets filled, and there's less. It feels like there certainly is not. There's still 24 hours in a day, but it feels like there's less than 24 hours in a day. I don't know about you, but we give of our time, we give of our talents, we give of our treasure, and we give of our service. And we do that in a myriad of ways. Again, it's not just about what we do on Sunday morning, but it's about how we live out the rest of the 167 hours throughout the week. It's not the 1 hour on Sunday. What are we doing with other 157? 157 hours. I think that's right. Anyway, um, and so we talked about giving. We talked about slowing down, taking time to slow down and be observant to see what's around us. And then this last week, we finished off it by talking about, and again, I think they all connect. They all build off of each other. If we can get the idea of setting healthy boundaries, not only in our spiritual life or in our connection to God, but also in our personal and professional lives, it they roll over. It snowballs into everything else. If we're willing to slow down and be observant, it helps us with what we learned this last week, and that is to be people who journal, people who write down their thoughts, or who write down moments in their life, who write down their questions, the things that they're learning. There is something wired in our DNA that helps us to better remember, to better process, to better understand big, huge, confusing, overwhelming things in our life. There's something about writing it down that helps us. Anybody at the beginning of each day, or at the night before, write down, these are the things I have to get done today. I can remember those things throughout the day, but I'm more prone to forget them. I'm more prone to not finish it if I haven't written it down. There's something about writing it with my hand and then seeing it out on the paper or on the post-it note, or wherever you write it down. There's something about seeing it that helps me to remember it, but also work it into my daily life. There's something about writing something down, or the power of writing something down. Even if you have a lot of stuff going on, and it's hard to work through in your mind, sometimes just writing it all out on paper, setting up a mind map, this process of writing everything, and then each of the things you have to do, and put a circle around it. And something about seeing it, you're able to better put it into the order it needs to be done, so that you can better understand. um, I remember reading just this last week that there's this computer program that, uh, and bear with me, because I believe, I feel like this connects. But there was this computer program, and it was helping drivers, um, like, not like UPS or FedEx, but local delivery drivers, like the Grub Hubs, and the the Amazon, and like Walmart deliveries, that type of deal, Walmart groceries. Um, and so there was this computer program, this algorithm that was set up to help these individuals to better deliver, so they're not wasting time and gas, and all this, these resources. And these individuals are finding that they have more time in the day now, and they're spending less time in the car. They're driving less. They're wasting less gas. Um, and it has to do with, you lay it all out, lay out what I have to do today, lay out what I'm stressed about, lay out whatever it is. There's something about putting it out on paper, or having it out and seeing it, and then mapping it out. Here's what I should do first, and then this, and then this. It makes us more productive. It makes us more aware. It helps us to slow down. It gives us more time in our day. There's just something about writing things down, when we're working through something very difficult, or when we're dealing with something, unbelievably emotional. There's something about, sharing just some of our thoughts. Again, I'm not saying. I think sometimes we assume, when we hear journal, we think of diary, and that kind of childish way of writing out every little thing that you did that day, and it's very surface level. I'm not talking about that. And again, I'm not putting down people who have a diary, or kids who do that. But this journaling is something completely different. It's writing down the big ideas, the big thoughts, the things that you're wrestling with, and something about just letting it out there. And and giving it some time. It's like it really does feel like anybody. I know this sometimes this happens with us when we tell someone, we're dealing with something, where a stress or a pain or an emotional hurt, and just sharing it with someone, we feel lighter. And I truly believe it's also true with when we write it down. We may not feel it, we may not be able to work through it in that moment, but there's something about putting it down on paper. It allows our mind to kind of lighten a little bit and process it in the background. That when we come back to it a day, a week, a month later, even longer, we come back and we say, "Oh yeah, you know, that's the way I felt in that moment, and I know I don't feel that way now." You can see the growth. You can chart it. You can see the ways in which God has been working in your life. You can see the who you were at different points throughout your weeks and months and years. And so, um, and so writing these things down, journaling is a beautiful way of helping us to remember what God has done, to remember who we were at different points in our lives, to remember how we felt, um, to remember just the ways in which the good and the bad things that happen in our lives. And so I truly, truly believe, and I'm seeing this in my own life and everything that I'm going through. I truly believe that this is a very beneficial thing for us. It's not something that is done that only for girls or boys. It is beneficial for all of us. But to chart, to write down the good things of the days and the bad, to write down our questions. When we're wrestling with very difficult passages of scripture, and there's a lot of them. Let's be honest. There's some difficult passages. There's some difficult words that Jesus said, or is written down to have said. That it's really hard. Like, what was Jesus thinking when he said it, or why did Jesus do it in that way? And to ask those questions is truly important. But when we're willing to write it down, it allows us to work through it, to process it, to try to peel away at the different layers. And and so this is very beneficial in our study of scriptures, of growing in our walk with Christ. And so this idea of journaling has so many levels to it, and I really believe that it can be beneficial to us. And who wouldn't want to? I've heard this said, and I know I've repeated this, but um, I've heard individuals who have said to me over the years in ministry, in the moment when I was going through that thing, whatever it was, sickness, of a family issue, a marital change, whatever it is. I've heard people tell me, in the moment, I was just so overwhelmed. I was filled with all the different emotions that you feel. But now looking back on it, a year, or 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is later on, I see that at the time that was difficult, and I had to go through it. But who I am now because of it, I I'm so thankful. I shared, I shared I remember this last year I shared a story about Stephen Colbert, the late night talk show host and comedian. There was a tragic accident where he lost some family members in a plane crash, and he said, it was very difficult at the time, and he had to really work through it and process it, and it was tough, as it should be. But looking back on it now, where it led him, it led him to reconnect his faith, to his Catholic roots, and it really gave him a deeper and more profound sense of who he was and his connection to the divine. And he says now, looking back on it, and he said, I I don't regret that it happened anymore. I'm glad that it did. Not that he was glad that, certainly, that his family members died. I mean, that's morbid, but he's thankful for where it led him to who he is today. And so, it's a weird, he said, it was a weird thing to say, that I'm thankful for that. But I mean, that's what it should be about, right? It's not we're thankful for the situation. We're thankful for who we are now because of it. We're thankful for who how God came in and allowed us to connect with God deeper, for God to walk with us, and for us to lean on God. We realize so much that we're not going through this alone. And these are things that we can learn and know if we're willing to write them down and chart our timeline. To go back and say, "Oh, I remember that now," because things happen. We forget. New problems, new joys come up in our lives, and our brain cannot remember or keep all of that in the front of our minds, and so it gets pushed to the back every new thing comes. And so being able to write it down and to chart, this is how I felt on this day. This is how I was working through it, and I was angry, or I was hurt, or I was depressed, and then to go be able to see, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, whatever it is, later on down the line, you can go back and you can say, "Wow, I would have forgotten all of the details, but I can see how I've been growing in this. I can see that I've worked through it. I'm a stronger person today because of it." Now, does it still hurt? Am I over it? No. It's not about that, but it's saying, it's using it, and it's being able to use this technique of writing it down to see the progression, to chart it. And there's something so powerful about being able to go back and to see the growth. It's I think we all know that we've grown, but sometimes we don't get to see it. It's like, when our kids are little, we chart, we mark a little notch somewhere in the home, to see how they've been growing. You know, our children know that they grow. They know that they're getting taller, but there's something about seeing it on the wall that really makes it far more powerful. It sinks in. You're like, "Oh wow, I can see it. Here's how tall I was at this age, here and here and here," and you can visually see it. There's something very powerful about that. There's something so neat that when kids go back, to their childhood home and they can see that, it brings back these memories that it's a warm feeling. And they knew they grew because we grow as human beings from little kids to adults. We grow, but to see it is far more powerful, isn't it? So I hope that this can be a tool and a technique that we can all use to apply in our lives, and help us to grow in our love, in our patience, in our peace, our understanding, and our connection to God. That's what it's about. That's why we're here. And so, why waste time? Why do anything that hurts our whole point of living? And so, I hope this can be beneficial for us all this morning, and as the weeks go by. Um, if you have any prayer requests, please leave those in the comment section. We're certainly thankful for Scott gathering with us. We're continuing to pray for him and his recovery, being able to go home today, hopefully, from the hospital, and for his continued uh, healing as he goes forward. So we're with you, Scott, every single day, praying for you. Um, and we certainly want to lift up the Sally Laws and the whole Laws family, the passing of John this past week, and the funeral will be this weekend. We with them through all of this. If there's any other prayer requests, feel free to leave those. But would you join me in a time of prayer? Oh God, we come before you this morning, and we're just humbled to be in your presence, God. We're humbled to be able to take this time to connect with you, God, but also to connect with each other. I mean, that is the beauty of our community. That God, we come together, saying we're not perfect. We don't have all the answers. We're broken, and and we're with fault. But God, you accept us as we are. You say, "Welcome, good and faithful servant." We're welcome. You are loved here. You are valued here. You're appreciated here. And we come together, and we share life together. And so this is an opportunity to do that this morning, God. So we're thankful for all those who are here this morning and journeying with us. We, God, pray that you will be with each of them. Help them today in all that they go through. Help them this week, and in all that they will face. Give them strength that they need to face today. And God, for all of those that we've lifted up, for Scott and Sally Laws and the whole Laws family, for all those who are hurt or sick, God, we ask for healing and restoration. We ask for love and for peace and for patience, God, for all those who need it. For those who feel lost, God, help them to know that they are found in you, that you know who they are. And God, for all that we will face, help us to have enough strength to make it for today. You'll help us tomorrow. Help us to lean on you today with our whole heart. God, we just ask that um, you guide us, protect us, watch over us, and strengthen us. For we pray all of this in your amazing name. Amen. Blessings to you all on this beautiful day. Um, Enjoy the weather while it lasts. If you're in the Salisbury, Wycomico area, it's going to be a beautiful sunny day, but tomorrow might be a little colder. So enjoy this moment, this day. Uh, Feel free, join us. For worship, we worship every Sunday morning. 9 a.m. is our contemporary service. 10:30 a.m. is our traditional. We'd love to have you join with us, and we are always back here Thursday mornings, 8:30 a.m. God bless.